Sonra sana bir verirsem sana uzunluğunda ekran paylaşımı yapabilirsen sen bir şey söylüyorsan ben sana banttan yayın yapımı varsa ben şimdi sana bir tane koyarım. O linkteki şöyle ordinary smoking. Neyin kısaltılışıymış. I quit ordinary smoking. Orası öyle tabii ki. Orası öyle tabii ki. Ama normal sigara beni bozuyor. Benim sağlık sorunumdan dolayı. İnsan içtiği zaman bacaklarım ağrıyor. Sağlık sorunum var. Ama bu kadar şey fark etmiyor. Tabii. Oradan başladığım kısım.
apologies for being a bit late, simply because I had a bit of an internet drama on this side. There we go. All right, so sorry about that. Now then, let's get smashing. Today we're going to do what we've been doing in the morning lesson for a little bit. It's called the necessity no, it's called The Approach to Studying the Wisdom of Kabbalah. All right, so as you know, we're doing a bit of Zohar and a little bit of the study of the 10 Sefirot, but we've also managed to squeeze in there a little bit on the topic of the approach to studying the wisdom of Kabbalah. And I think it's a good topic to go over. And there's a lot of information here that we can use definitely to kind of sharpen our approach to the study. So let's get started, shall we? And the first item on that is from Baal Sulam's Introduction to the Study of the 10 Sefirot. All right, so basically, the first part of this text is the necessity to study the wisdom of Kabbalah. All right, so from Baal Sulam. Why then did the Kabbalists obligate every person to study the wisdom of Kabbalah? Indeed, there's a great thing about it, which should be publicized. There's a wonderful, invaluable remedy to those who engage in the wisdom of Kabbalah. Although they do not understand what they're learning, through the yearning and the great desire to understand what they're learning, they awaken upon themselves the lights that surround their soul. All right, so obviously, like obligating someone to study wisdom of Kabbalah is really not going to really happen, okay, because it takes a desire to study. That's why later on it says, although they don't understand what they're learning, through the yearning, right? So it's very important for a person who has a desire to kind of, study the wisdom of Kabbalah, because we basically attain everything inner sensations that we can actually relate to with respect to the purpose of life from the writings, right? So why does a person come to the wisdom of Kabbalah in the first place? It's because we're asking about the meaning of life, right? Why am I living? What's the purpose of life? And also, if you look at life in general, lately, especially in our generation, it's just turning into some kind of meaningless routine with a bunch of dramas heading our way all the time, from all kinds of pandemia to economic crises, inflation, shortage in this, shortage in that, the war in Ukraine, and all kinds of mumbo jumbo, and also our personal life as well, right? It's also a little bit of a mess going up and down all the time. We can't really relate to why we're doing something, right? So you're at work and you're thinking, God, what am I doing with this stuff? All right, so it's it's a very, very challenging period for humanity overall. All right, and for us to go through these challenges, the Kabbalists are saying, listen, it's really a good idea to study wisdom of Kabbalah because it describes to us our nature and our general status and what we need to do in life. And if we don't understand what we need to do in life, everything else we're doing is just really mumbo jumbo. All right, and that's obviously taking us more and more further and further into chaos, not just individually, but as humanity as well. So like we're all kind of going through this turmoil at an individual, at a micro level and at a macro level. All right, so very, very important for us to really understand. And the Kabbalists, of course, would love everyone to sit and study. They really would. And this is why they're writing all these texts for us. They're saying, listen, there's a meaning to life and you can attain it. And it's a great meaning. And everybody has a great, lovely, wonderful place that they can attain in life and really have a great, successful, peaceful, calm, tranquil, happy life. And the more we're kind of stubborn about it and not realizing this, life is pressuring us more and more. Just like we pressure our children, if they get a little stubborn and they don't want to grow up, we have to force them to do things according to their age. Otherwise, they'll get left behind from the rest of their peers. And this is how life is. So life is pushing us ever more, harshly, and we will have to cede. And that's just how it is. We'll have to cede to life. If we do it voluntarily by nullifying our ego and studying and wanting to understand why we're living and what we have to do while we're here, because it's not, we're not here to build businesses and big, buildings and stuff, or to invent all kinds of gigs and gadgets. Okay, there's more to life than all this kind of stuff. And also, you should already begin to feel that all these inventions have not really brought upon us the tranquil life, the calmness that we've been seeking. Instead, They've made our lives much more complicated. We feel like we're much more in a rush. Okay, you know, the previous generations were calmer. Okay, so you know, when I was young, we didn't have mobile phones because there were no mobile phones, right? When I was a kid. So if somebody needed to call you, or if they did call you, you needed to be home. Okay, and if you weren't home, that was it. And then came out, you know, voice message recorders, right? So you used to connect that to the telephone. So if somebody called and you were out, they could leave you a message so you could get back to them. So, you know, things were like really extended in terms of keeping in touch, and everything was more like you didn't have to rush around. You actually lived much more, how do you say, independently, freely, doing, you know, not being constrained all the time, looking at your phone, thinking what's happening with life. And am I missing out on something? Did somebody call me? Did somebody do this, do that, and that kind of stuff? So our lives were much more fun because we could fill it up with other stuff rather than looking at phones all the time. And now in the 21st century, although we're that much interconnected with all the gadgets, we're also that far away from having a calm life because the phone's beeping every 2 minutes. You know, somebody's sending you this, somebody's sending you that, and you just want to throw it away sometimes. It's not a bad idea at all, I think. However, that's the situation, right? So in such a state that we're in as individuals and as humanity, it's really important for us to understand how we can get out of this cycle, this rat race, constantly going around and round and round and round, and then our days are going by really quick as well. You know, all of a sudden it's what? Tuesday, right? When did the weekend finish already? Okay, so all of a sudden we're on Tuesday. And as you can see, week by week, day by day, time is going much faster. And because it's going much faster, we're unable to keep up. And all this pressure is like building on top of humanity and all of us. And we're turning into this pressure cooker. It's about to blow up. All right, so it's really important for all of us to understand the ups and downs of life so we can tune ourselves to the flow and the direction that life is wanting to take us and will take us to as well. Because in life, as you all know, there is no other choice but to grow up. And just like I can't stop myself and say, listen, I love being 21. I think I'm going to stay that's 21 for the rest of my life. It's not going to happen because life is pressuring us to get older and to move forward. And same in our spiritual, our inner development as well. Life will pressure us to change. So if we do it voluntarily, that would be great. And this is what it means when they say the Kabbalists, you know, why did the Kabbalists obligate every person to study wisdom of Kabbalah? They wanted to teach everybody, simply because if you don't know the purpose and meaning of your life, you're just going to get lost in life. And then days go by, you get old and you end up dead with nothing at hand at all. All right. As usual, if you have any questions, shoot them through. We'll try to solve them together. Now, then, item number 2. This is from the article, again from Baal Islam, Introduction to From the Mouth of a Sage. You can therefore see the utter necessity for anyone from Israel, whomever he may be, to engage in the internality of Torah and its secrets. Now, when they're talking about, well, I'll explain this in a minute. Okay, let's just finish the whole paragraph. Without it, the intention of creation will not be completed in man. This is the reason that we reincarnate generation after generation to our current generation, which is the residue of the souls upon which the intention of creation has not been completed, as they did not attain the secrets of the Torah in past generations. Now, this is really important for us to understand, because we're getting fried in a frying pan generation after generation. Okay, so you can therefore see the utter necessity for anyone from Israel. Now, anyone from Israel means obviously not from the land of Israel or the country as in Israel. Israel is that dot in the heart that everybody has. If you are wondering about the meaning of life and why you're living, and you'd like to seek an answer to that, and you come to the wisdom of Kabbalah and you study wisdom of Kabbalah to attain the purpose of life, then you are called Israel, and you could be from anywhere on the planet. You can even be an atheist. It doesn't really matter, right? Because it's not going to do with anything with your genetics or your religion or your, I don't know, whatever, all right? It's got to do with this inner feeling, okay? So this is really important to understand. So if you kind of entered that sensation where you're looking for the meaning of life and want to attain it, and you come to the wisdom of Kabbalah, which comes from Adam, by the way. So this is way, way before the people of Israel or any other religion. Whomever he may be, to engage in the internality of the Torah and its secrets. See, it says whomever he may be, or she may be, obviously, should engage in the internality of the Torah and its secrets. Now, internality of the Torah and its secrets means that I have to engage in the thought, intention, and in the inner sensations and the impressions I'm going through with respect to my direction in attaining the meaning of life. So we're not talking about just any feeling and sensation that we live here in our corporeal lives, because our corporeal life is mostly our animate life, right? So I feel good or bad, I eat, I don't know, I sleep, whatever your desires are, right? Food, family, sex, money, respect, knowledge. I mean, other than those six, there's nothing really happening, right? So if a person, putting those aside, wants to attain the meaning of life, one should understand the inner process and the inner development and the elevation that one needs to go through. And those are called the secrets of the Torah. So those are spiritual levels, higher levels of perception. Without it, the intention of creation will not be completed in man. Now, this is very important to understand. If I do not attain spirituality, if I do not attain the meaning of my life, which is to come to equivalence of form with the Creator, so I can exist in reality like the Creator exists in reality, okay? If I don't do that, the intention of creation will not be completed in man. What does that mean? Well, this means that this is the reason why we reincarnate. So if we don't manage to finish the purpose of life, life kills us. And somehow in the next generation, the previous generation is reborn. Now, when it's talking about reincarnation, obviously there are a lot of definitions out there, but it's not like the reincarnation you might be thinking about in, I don't know, Eastern philosophies, right? So it's not like I die and then I come back as me again with accumulated sensations or, inner instincts. That's not the situation. Why? Because otherwise we'd be doing a population count, and spirituality is not a matter of counting heads, right? It's a matter of qualitative evolution of the cumulative or the accumulated sensations that humanity has gone through, and those are being reincarnated inside a person or inside the whole generation, let's say, when they come to be. All right. So it's got nothing to do with me at an individual level. It's the whole of humanity actually going through this process, generation after generation. All right. So I don't want anyone to think that, I'll die and I'll come back anyway. Okay, that doesn't work that way. All right. So it's a different concept that we need to understand. So if we don't come to the purpose of life as an individual and as a generation, it means then we're just going to be slapped around, increased suffering, increased, lack of pleasure, right? Increase in negative everything, right? So negative everything increasing all the time. And as you can see with humanity as well, we're not just going through corporeal suffering anymore. We're also going through qualitative suffering, which is the suffering that is going on inside a person. And this is why we have a lot of depression in the world right now. Depression, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, violence, right? These are now beyond our general animate level of suffering. So we've gone to a higher level of suffering, and this is why we're really getting squeezed and can't really make sense of what's going on with us and with overall humanity. So as long as we don't get to the purpose of life, this turmoil is going to keep increasing with every generation. All right. And this is something we all have to do. There is no other choice. Radio. Now then, let's read a little bit more. This is Baal Salam. This is excerpt number 3, again from Baal Salam. Since the whole of wisdom of Kabbalah speaks of the revelation of the Creator, naturally, there's none more successful teaching for its task. This is what the Kabbalists aimed for, to arrange it so it is suitable for studying. And so they studied in it until the time of concealment. It was agreed to conceal it for a certain reason. However, this was only for a certain time and not forever. As it is written in the Zohar, this wisdom is destined to be revealed at the end of days, and even to children. So this is really important, because the Kabbalists for thousands of years didn't really have anyone to talk to, despite the fact that they would have loved it if people were interested. However, though, humanity was not, because humanity was too busy trying to advance itself in all types of material and corporeal things. Obviously, it's not their fault. This is just a process of development. There's no one to accuse or blame here. It's just a natural phase of development. However, though, when we've come to such a state as humanity is in right now, where we can't really find an exit to get out of this state that we're in, and as we're not being successful either in becoming happier in life, okay, Kabbalists are explaining to us, especially Baal Salam and Rabash, they wrote for us in the previous century. I said, listen, guys, you cannot be happy if you keep living like this. It's just not going to work out, and it doesn't. So they wrote a lot of stuff on the Zohar, also on the Tree of Life. Those are the writings of Baal Salam. And Rabash, he left for us tons of articles explaining these little things, nuances that we get in those writings, so we can actually use them in our inner development, so that we can move forward towards spirituality. Our laziness, let's say, or unwillingness to move forward in our next level of development will therefore cause us great grief, as we will begin to experience more and more. So the Kabbalists have laid out a framework of study for us, saying, listen, you can attain the purpose and the meaning of life. All you've got to do is just basically study the wisdom of Kabbalah. And just, as you study, develop with the study, let the study work on you, right? Let it massage you into this new form, like a dough, right? So let the wisdom make a nice shaped cookie out of you, and then it'll be all good. And if we, work with that, then we'll move forward in life with less pressure. And because we begin to understand the reason for the things that happen to us, we begin to kind of decipher the cause for the consequence, then we can actually relate to life much better. And we don't have to go through all these, depressive moments and ask ourselves, why me all the time? Right? And this is very, very important. If humanity takes on this voluntary development by studying, then they actually save themselves a lot of trouble. The same kind of thing we would as well in corporeal things as well. If I'm going to start, if I'm going to, I don't know, use an axe or something like dangerous, right? It's, I better read the manual for something like that, or I don't know, a saw or whatever, even a car. Some cars are now so technologically advanced, you better read the manual and see what every button is doing, okay? Because it's not like it's not the same way every few years. The whole system is changing. So it's better to understand first what we're getting into or what we are in, and then, start to work with this slowly, with understanding. And that understanding can save us a lot of grief. Okay. And what does it say? The wisdom is destined to be revealed at the end of days, and even to children. And think about it. The wisdom of Kabbalah is pretty much now open to everyone. Anyone can study it, right? So basically, we've come to what the Kabbalists wrote about 2,000 years ago. So 2,000 years ago, they wrote all the stuff, they concealed it, and then, they wrote about it saying, listen, at the end of days, which means at the end of days means that when humanity is really sick and tired of life, they're just tired. And you get to see that in a lot of people. A lot of people won't have a desire to do anything. They just don't want to do something, So very, very few people will find the energy to run around and get stuff done and so on. And we'll actually see a decline in capitalism. We'll see a decline in many things because of the lack of desire, that we just don't have a desire. We just don't want to do anything extra. This is why people don't want to go to work. They're resigning. The ones who resign, even though they're miserable because they're resigned, still don't want to go to work. Okay, so it's weird. It's a weird situation, right? You resign because you're sick and tired of it, and you're miserable and you're sorry because you quit your job, and then you're thinking, no, I don't want to go back anyway. So it's like a funny phase we're going through. And we're going to have to, one way or another, get out of this state so we can find some meaning in life. This will have to happen, either positively or, with pressure. Let's hope we all study well and it will help the whole of humanity. All right, let's read. This is from Rabash. This is excerpt number 4. Man's primary work is to examine the greatness of the Creator. That is, one should delve in books that speak of the greatness of the Creator. And while delving, one should depict to oneself to what extent our sages, the Tanaim and the Amoraim, felt the greatness of the Creator. Hamoraim, not Tanaim and Hamoraim, felt the greatness of the Creator. One should pray to the Creator to shine so he may feel his greatness, so he can subdue his heart and annul before the Creator and not follow the currents of the world, which is pursuing only the satisfaction of beastly lusts. But that the Creator will open his eyes so he may engage all his life in Torah and work, and in all your ways know him. That is, even when engaging in corporeal matters, it will be for the purpose of holiness as well. All right, so this is also very interesting, isn't it? Man's primary work is to examine the greatness of the Creator. So this is basically what we were created for. Obviously, the Creator doesn't need us to see him as great. Greatness of the Creator means greatness of his attributes. And the Creator is always described in Kabbalistic texts as good and love and bestow. So what we want to examine is this love and bestowal, these attributes, these traits, so that instead of our egoistic nature, we could swap with Creator's nature. And that is why we need to see the greatness of the Creator. This is, one should delve in books that speak of the greatness of the Creator. And while delving, one should depict to oneself to what extent our sages, the Tanaim and Hamoraim, felt the greatness of the Creator. So we should actually study the wisdom of Kabbalah that talks about the greatness of bestowal, love and bestowal. And we should think about how we're going to do this. We should think about how we need to change, what I need to change, what traits in me surface, and I'd like to convert them from an egoistic application to a bestowing, a loving application. So the study, as we study more and more, we should begin to kind of like relate to our inner traits that should become more prominent, right? It should become like bold, underlined, saying, hey, I'm here, right? So this egoistic nature, as it pops out and surfaces, I should be able to pick them off one by one and depict to myself how the opposite of this state should be in me so that I could be as great and exist as great as the Creator himself. So what we essentially are doing is from an opposite state, we are building a better state. So from the bad, we're bridging and building the good. In order for us to do that, this is why we need to study the wisdom of Kabbalah that talks about the greatness of the Creator, what it means to exist in that greatness, and not follow the currents of the world, which is pursuing only the satisfaction of beastly lusts. We've been doing that for many years. We've been pursuing our corporeal desires for thousands of years. Okay? And look where it's gotten us. We have not managed to learn anything. Right? So some famous historians were talking about how great it is that after all these years, we've learned about the negative sides of war, and we're not warring anymore, right? And that was a few months just before Russia and Ukraine broke out. See how humanity is stupid. See how stupid. And these are like prominent historians. They're like in the literature, you know what I'm saying? What do they lack? They lack the understanding of human nature and the development, evolution of human nature. And with that proper understanding of human nature, you will never be able to stop any conflict or war. There's no difference between a divorce and a fight, which is a domestic argument in the house, and an argument between two countries or two neighbors or two friends. It's not different. It's the same principle, human egoism. And it is so sad to see people with PhDs and all kinds of professors and all kinds of things in life who've studied history, humanity, sociology, all kinds of sciences. They can stand up and say, wow, isn't humanity great? We've finally come out of this state of warring with each other. That is such a shame. Right? Pity, but what can you do? So how are we going to learn? We're going to learn by getting beaten up by life again. Right? And again. So what can you do? So we need to move away from following or running after all this corporeal stuff, because by doing so, we're actually neglecting our inner health. All right. So, and there's a price that we're paying. So the more corporeal we chase, the unhealthier we get, and all of those sicknesses that we're going through, including the pandemic, the COVID-19, and we're going to get other stuff as well along the way. It's not over. What's going to happen is just simply we're going to go from one suffering to a bigger suffering. So a lot of people are now dying from cancer, heart disease, all kinds of diseases, COVID-19, what have you, right? For the first time, I think in humanity as well, the number of people dying are more than the number of births. All right, so we're going through an interesting period, aren't we? Right? Why? Because we're just making ourselves sick and tired by running after all kinds of stupid things, where in fact we should be taking a lot of time, decent amount of time. When I say a lot of time, I'm obviously not saying forget your corporeal life. No. And I'm saying a person, well, Kabbalists are saying a person should dedicate some time to this inner development where he can support his purpose in life. So he can move in that direction as well. Okay, and the, because we don't pay any attention to that, we're just going through a lot of turmoil and sickness, death, wars, pandemics, all kinds of stuff. So we will have to, as humanity, witness the collapse of economy as we know it. We're going to have to, right? It's just not working out. And we can't live the way we're living, right? Consuming like this. I mean, the world has a limit. There's a limit to how much you can cut trees, dig up mines, all kinds of metals, and there's a limit to everything. There's a limit to oil, there's a limit to everything. So we're going to have to pull back if we want to kind of balance ourselves out and stop the suffering that we're going through at a micro and macro level. We're going to have to pull back and give some more importance to our spiritual development, which should, with this inner development, which should actually bring us to a balanced life rather than an over-consuming state, right? So we should be pulling back on that consumption naturally by understanding that running after more than I need is killing me, right? It's really killing us. So, it's not a surprise that we're going through all kinds of dramas in life. Life will bring us a few more along the way, which should hopefully give us an opportunity to reevaluate our lives again. So this COVID-19 worked rather well with its, kind of like stopped everything for a moment. And we began to see dolphins back in the channels of Venice, right? And all kinds of places just settled down. We had a pretty much cleansing of the environment with all the COVID-19 activity, the COVID-19 stopping us all. And that should be a sign for us to learn from. And if we haven't learned anything from it, life will bring us something harsher, like we do with kids, right? You tell them once, you tell them twice, then you got to pressure them to do something. And life will do the same. And we will feel it more and more. We'll feel more hurt in the long run. All right. So getting out of that state depends on how we begin to study our lives and our place in reality, and what our place in reality should be, and how we should attain that. Ba'al Islam again. This is excerpt number 5. I will tell you as I heard from the Admor of Kalshin. In earlier times, one had to first obtain all 7 external teachings, called the 7 maidens, that served the king's daughter, as well as terrible mortification. And yet not many gained favor in the eyes of the Creator. But since we have been rewarded with the teachings of the Ari and the workways of Baal Shem Tov, it is truly possible for anyone, and the above preparations are no longer necessary. So Baal Shem is saying, listen, in the good old days, life was tough and attaining spirituality was tougher. Okay, so with all the technology and that we've come up with, life is a bit more easier, isn't it? Life is easier. We can now go to the supermarket, get food and stuff. Isn't that nice? Okay, it's literally coming to our feet with one phone call. So life is easier, and attaining spirituality is also easier. Right, so we don't have to go through all kinds of restrictions, all kinds of dramas, or fill our minds up with all kinds of sciences to come to some kind of a conclusion. Why? Because humanity is also developed. We've been through so much stuff. We've been through so many experiences over life that's all an accumulation within us. And this is why we don't have a desire to do many things, because all of this accumulation is like kind of brought us to this inner understanding, right? So intellectually, maybe we can't really put a finger on it, but this inner understanding that, some things are just, it's just not worth running after stuff, right? And that's development. That's development. That's all the accumulation that we've gone through in humanity. So Baal Sulam and Rabash have kind of laid it all out for us from the writings of the Ari and from the teachings of Baal Shem Tov, so that we can actually do this in the 21st century nice and easy. Nice and easy. All we've got to do, sit down, study the books together, and think about how we can adapt ourselves, how we can change to come to life, rather than, working against the currents of life, right? Because we're not harmonious with life. We're completely out of balance. And this is why the planet has to react to us with also natural disasters. As you can see, the frequency of natural disasters are increasing. Why? Because we've increased in our consumption. We've increased in our egoism. And our egoism is really eating up the whole planet. So then the planet has to adjust accordingly. And this COVID-19, all kinds of pandemics and stuff. A lot of people have all kinds of theories about conspiracies and so on. But just think about it. A disease is a disease, even if it's man-made, right? It's just a reflection of how bad our nature is. So if you think about the virus, or if you think it's some kind of a, man-made conspiracy or whatever, that's even a better demonstration of how bad our nature is, how human nature is causing suffering to the whole of humanity. But this is how dangerous we are, really dangerous creatures. Well, we'll have to learn sooner or later, one way or another, that we need to come to balance with life and that our egoism will not win this war. So these number items, are there any questions? No, right? So we're just going through nice and easy, nice, good. Item number 6, this is from Ramhal, the gates of Ramhal. The Creator is commanding us to know his guidance. And we do want to know what this guidance teaches us. What this guidance teaches us is but the wisdom of truth, which is delving in his godliness. It follows that we undoubtedly see it as mandatory to learn the wisdom of truth. Right? The Creator is commanding us to know his guidance. Basically means, listen, guys, we've got to grow up. Okay, just like everybody else in life, you've got to grow up. And as you grow up, you begin to understand how you need to participate with society. You need to understand how to participate in life, with nature, with the outside world, with your family, friends, everybody, your country, the world, whatever. So understanding the Creator means understanding the laws of nature and understanding also where we are in conflict with the laws of nature. Because if I begin to understand where we're, going through these conflicting moments, then I can begin to see where the balance can be. All right, so other than that, there's no choice for us. So on the one hand, our egoism has to do bad things so that we can understand that our human nature, if it works in an egoistic way, is bad. But as we understand that this is bad for us, we can shift towards working with our nature in a different way, in an opposite way. And what's the opposite of egoism? It's altruism. So when everybody becomes altruistic, if you think about it, everybody's like helping everybody else. So there's no way there can be hunger, homelessness, poorness, or whatever. But our egoism wants to be on top of everyone, because egoism is an exaggerated self-value. And if I value myself more than others, well, that's a problem then, isn't it? It means I'm out of balance. So until we understand that our egoistic nature needs to be filed away, sandpapered, ironed out, we're going to go through dramas and problems. So the sooner we understand that our egoistic nature is the only bad thing in reality, then we can work towards building something opposite and say, well, you know what, I'm not going to use my egoism. Why? Because it's causing me grief. And we'll begin to see that everybody's egoism is harming themselves. So it's like I'm waking up every day, shooting myself in the foot with everything I'm doing. It's just bringing myself the recognition of evil through bad experiences. So by understanding his guidance, the laws of nature, how bestowal, how reciprocity works with mutual consideration, if I understand that guidance, then that's it. We already attain a completely different perspective, a completely different approach, a completely different vision to life. And all of those things are then a leverage to elevate myself to a higher level of consciousness by observing reality from a different perspective, completely the opposite of egoism. And that new perception, that new observation point becomes your spiritual attainment, which is felt above your bodily sensation. And that's what's called a spiritual higher conscious existence. And that's definitely the kind of thing we'd like to build. And that's what we're striving for. So the more a person studies the wisdom of Kabbalah and goes through this inner change, the sensations and the feelings that we develop and build become somewhat separate, but side by side to our corporeal perception as well. So you begin to observe things from two opposite sides. And from these two opposite angles, you can begin to develop and build something in between them, which is that balancing point. Rightio, so that's 8:50. Let's not move on to item number 7 and call it a night, and a beautiful night it is here on the Mediterranean coast. I hope you guys have a great evening, and hopefully we'll see you guys next week. All the best. Bye-bye. Take care.